Well, clearly it's starting to come back, but it needs help and cooperation from the rest of the world. I think there's been a lot of focus on the other Western economies and Western countries and their response to COVID and the massively negative impact that it had on business. But people really have not tuned in yet to the China comeback. And as I said, it is going to take other parts of the world, and China will also be looking internally in many ways to help to support its manufacturers and its businesses, because, you know, frankly, the rest of the world is some weeks and perhaps some months behind mounting their own comeback.
We didn't get a growth target for the economy at China's crucial 2 sessions this week. Do you think that's worrying?
No, I think it's startlingly honest and direct, and I think there's so much uncertainty. Why take a guess at a number? Why artificially put a number up? There are so many variables here that have to be considered. So again, I think it actually is somewhat refreshing. I don't necessarily see it as a means for criticism or a lack of confidence. These world economies are so interrelated, as we've seen, you know, with China heading into COVID, coming out of COVID, the rest of the world hopefully following suit, that I think that's the cautious thing to do.
That interrelatedness, how do you think COVID-19 has changed and will change global trade and specifically China's role in that?
Well, many countries have turned nationalist. Many countries have turned internal, looking to re-onshore industries that have gone elsewhere, China, other perhaps more developing countries. So I think that's going to be forever altered. The relative price advantage is now going to become less of a factor, and the reliability and dependability of a supply chain in the face of completely unforeseen global events like a pandemic or an economic catastrophe, those are going to be evaluated as very real possibilities as a result of everyone's experience in COVID.
The U.S. has been trying to convince some of its allies to ease or cut back on trade with China. I saw recently a South Korean official tweeting that the U.S. is an ally, but that China is a partner and it needs partnerships for its economies. Do you think this U.S. effort might backfire?
Rather than a U.S. effort, I think what I see, and I talked about nationalism a little bit, but I think regionalism. So I think the ASEAN countries are going to look to trade on a closer basis and be more tightly aligned, perhaps as partners. They're geographically closer, they're culturally and perhaps even idealistically closer. So I think you're going to see some of that. It'll be, you know, regional nationalism, if I could coin a term for it. I think countries are making their own decisions about who they want to trade with and on what basis. I think if you ask business people, they'd like to get back to normal, they'd like to get back to the way it was before as quickly as possible, and they're less inclined to be so nationalistic about some of those business decisions.
Dan, very briefly, do you think this attack China mantra that we've been seeing in the U.S. is going to embolden China?
It depends on the industry. In the world I am in, which is investment banking and initial public offerings, we've seen the effect of changes in rules at the NASDAQ, the SEC taking a harsh position, the White House saying don't invest in Chinese equities. We've seen that result in Chinese companies looking elsewhere, perhaps returning to China for their IPOs, perhaps going to Hong Kong, perhaps listing in London. So it can have many different repercussions and many different implications. And certainly when someone is attacked or feels they're attacked, you know, they're going to respond.
Dan McClory.